Doreen Granpeesheh is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen.
Well, NH wrote in and says, my 5-year-old son has few physical stims. He has some vocal ones, but he also often zones out, sometimes whispering, and won't respond at all for a while. When we ask, he says he's thinking about X or Y, often a very special interest. Is this the equivalent of a mental stim?
Yeah, and it's totally fine as long as, so this is, it's interesting, this is a great question, because one of the things that our children sometimes have a hard time with is what's called set shifting.
Yeah.
So, and set shifting is the ability to switch a cognitive process on and off, or to switch from one to the other. And so I'll give you an example. Like I might, just for a moment, as we're doing the show even, you know, my phone might light up and I'll see my daughter's name on there or something. So my brain activity will immediately go to what does Charlie need, right? Mm-hmm. And it'll just be a moment. And then I will set shift back to the questions that are popping up on my iPad, and I will be able to refocus myself pretty fast, right? Yeah. And I still have in the background of my head, in my mind, I need to address Charlie's needs, right? But it's now shifted to the background. And with our kids, you'll notice that sometimes when they're like, even when they're focused on TV, let's say, and you call them, and this is not even just kids on the spectrum, this also happens a lot with teenagers and so on, and you'll call their name and they're just zoned out, right? They're just doing something else and they don't, it's almost like they don't hear you even. Yeah. And you get them to learn, right? Either by shouting at them, or you know, they will lose an opportunity and then they'll learn, whatever it is, but or you get in their face and they're, you know, you visually just get them back. And over time, we learn. It's one of those things that as adults, we shape ourselves. We learn how to set shift rapidly. And if your child was able to set shift, they would know that they can leave that thought behind and pay attention to your stimulus, whatever that might be, more rapidly. You can do exercises for this. So, I mean, you can do simple exercises, which are just, you know, have the child engaged in an activity and then have a bell go off or call their name, or just practice that activity. Another really good, you know, there are several tests that we do for set shifting. One of them is you just take a piece of paper and you write, it depends on the child's abilities, right? And you write
I would fail this.
Well, you get better at it. You get better at it. So what you do is you write A, B, C, D, and all over the page, right? Or on a big board, different places. And then you also put numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on and so forth. You can do that, or you could do, I don't know, you know, you can do different types of stimuli, but that's the test, the basics test. And then what you tell the child to do is to go from A to 1 to B to 2 to 3 to C. If you understand what I'm saying, is you're forcing them to set shift between alphabet and numbers and progressively expand, right? And that's a hard activity, but the child gets better at it. Another type of activity that involves set shifting is where you write the name of a color, but in a different color. So for instance, you will write blue in blue first, and then green in green, but then eventually you will write like blue, but using the color green. And when you and then you will give the instruction to the child, read blue, or tell me the color, show me the color blue, or tell me all the things that are blue. And it's confusing in the beginning, but honestly, you'll see that over time, you just get really, really better at it. And it becomes really hard when you tell someone to read, and what they're actually seeing is a different, you know, you're telling them to read blue, and it says BLUE, but it says it in red.
Yeah.
And people get very, very confused with that. But over time, your brain just becomes really good at focusing on one cognitive set.
Yeah.
And that helps this issue.
They have all those apps that are like brain games.
Oh, yeah,
That
yeah.
that have exactly
sure they
that
have
to work
those.
on that, and they recommend it for people of a certain age, you know, to help keep mental acuity and things like that. I've never been good at set shifting. I'm much better at it than I was when I was younger.
Yeah.
But, you know, one of the things in my marriage is that, you know, I said that I loved my husband and that, you know, he's amazing because my husband, like a lot of men, he works in the field of video games and he plays them. And I said, you know, I could be married to him forever because if he could be playing a video game and I could walk in the room and say, hey, and he immediately puts it down and is attentive to me, which is amazing. Most men, that is not the thing. And I always praise him for that, right? I cannot do the same. If I'm sitting and typing and he'll come and say hi, and I'm typing and I, you know, and he says, hi, baby. And finally I'm like, can you not see that I am writing? I cannot talk to you and write at the same, and I'm angry because my brain had to leave one thing to another to say hello, and now I lost my train of thought. And I like say, you know, I don't want to talk to you now. Leave me alone. And I get angry when my brain has to shift from one side to the other when I'm entrenched in the thing. So I just want to speak up for all the kids that are like creative and doing that, and to say to the parents, have an awareness of the fact that when you're asking them to shift, we have to make it worth their while, right?
100%, and thank you very much for saying that because it is hard to set shift. And that's, you used exactly the language, which is, you made me lose my train of thought. That's exactly what it is. And so, yes, you need to make it worth their while. You need to reward always for these types of activities. These are not easy. Mental, you know, mental games, teaching your brain to become more fluid, more flexible. This is part of flexibility, by the way, training, is super important, but it isn't easy. It's definitely
not easy, but possible to learn and get better. And I am better than I used to be.
Don't forget, you can watch Ask Dr. Doreen live every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Pacific time. We hope to see you there.